Have you ever wondered why Blackbeard, the most infamous pirate of all time, still terrifies and fascinates us centuries after his death? His name stirs fear and curiosity in equal measure, creating an image so powerful that it became legendary. Yet, behind this fierce reputation, there's a lot more to uncover. Who was the man behind the dark beard, and what made him so feared?
It's a mystery that's intrigued historians and storytellers alike. Blackbeard's origins are shrouded in secrecy, with questions about his true identity lingering even today. Was he really Edward Teach, or someone else entirely? During this podcast, we'll dig deeper into his life beyond the terrifying tales, providing insights that might change everything you thought you knew about this legendary pirate.
So, let's dive into where it all began for Blackbeard, back in around 1680 in Bristol, England. It's fascinating because this place was buzzing with seafaring and merchant activities, making it an ideal backdrop for our infamous pirate's start. But here's where it gets really interesting. Blackbeard's real name is still a bit of a mystery. Some suggest it was Edward Teach, while others believe it was Thatch, Thack, or even Tack.
That's right. And this confusion isn't just by chance. Historians like Colin Woodward have done a lot of digging into why people can't seem to agree on his name. One reason could be that during those times, spelling wasn't standardized. People often spelled phonetically, which means they wrote things down as they heard them. Plus, considering the different accents back then, it's no wonder there are so many variations.
Exactly. This adds to the mystique around Blackbeard, making him even more mysterious and exciting. Having multiple names could have been a strategy to keep people guessing, or perhaps it was just a result of the era's lack of formal records. It's also interesting to note that historical records do mention a Thatch living in Bristol, reinforcing the idea that Blackbeard might have used this as a cover.
Yes, the name Thatch appears in some records from around that period in Bristol. But despite these hints, there's still no concrete proof linking these records directly to Blackbeard himself. It seems like almost every piece of evidence we find leads to more questions than answers. This mystery surrounding his identity certainly adds layers to the legend of Blackbeard, making it difficult to ever fully unravel the enigma.
When we speak of Blackbeard's early life, there's a fascinating and lesser-known detail about his connections in Jamaica. Some pieces of evidence suggest that there might have been family ties there, and these ties could offer more depth to his story. There's a record of an Edward and Lucretia Theach in the Jamaican settlement of Spanish Town around 1700. They had a son named Cox Thatch, which raises questions about their relation, if any, to Blackbeard.
Indeed, these details add another layer of complexity to Blackbeard's history. Notably, genealogist Bayless Brooks has explored this family connection. He theorizes that Edward Thatch, a man of status in Jamaica, could have been related to the pirate we know as Blackbeard. Brooks found a document from 1706 where young Edward Thatch gives up his right to his father's estate, indicating family transactions that might explain the relationships further.
This inheritance document speaks volumes about Edward Thatch's status in Jamaica. The text revealed that Edward Thatch had a captain's position and seems to be well respected. These findings have led to speculation that this man of status might be Blackbeard's father, which opens up the narrative about Blackbeard's background even more. It's intriguing to think about how family ties might have influenced his path to piracy.
Absolutely. And the narrative is fascinating. Brooks's research also suggested that Cox Thatch might have been Blackbeard's sibling or half-sibling. Though not enough concrete evidence links these individuals directly to Blackbeard, these connections are compelling. They illustrate the possibilities of a well-to-do background before his life at sea. Moreover, the ties to a respectable family in Jamaica might explain some of the support Blackbeard found later on, despite his notorious career.
Continuing from where we've left off, it's fascinating how Blackbeard's journey from a privateer to a full-fledged pirate is quite a tale. Originally, he began his days as a privateer in the West Indies during the War of the Spanish Succession, a conflict that created many opportunities for sailors. This was a time when privateers were technically pirates, but they were allowed to attack enemy ships because they had the backing of their governments. However, once the war ended, many of these privateers found themselves out of work.
Absolutely. And it's this shift that marks a turning point for Blackbeard. Once the War of the Spanish Succession ended in 1714, Blackbeard, like many others, turned to piracy. This transition wasn't so abrupt considering his time as a privateer. He became connected with Benjamin Hornigold, a known pirate, who took him under his wing. Hornigold taught Blackbeard the ways of piracy, setting him on a path that would lead to his infamous reputation. The treasure from the 1715 Spanish shipwreck on the Florida coast was a significant motivator in their piratical pursuits.
Yes, indeed. Hornigold saw potential in Blackbeard, and soon enough, he was promoted to captain. He was given his own ship and a crew to command. This was around the time when Blackbeard was really starting to make a name for himself. The shipwreck they found was laden with treasure, which was incredibly enticing for many seafarers of the time. This discovery attracted a lot of attention to the area, and Blackbeard seized the opportunity. His skills and decisions during this period clearly displayed why he was so feared and respected among pirates.
Right. And this is what set Blackbeard on the path to becoming one of the most feared pirates of his time. Hornigold's mentorship and the lure of treasure undoubtedly shaped Blackbeard's career. But what truly cemented his fearsome status was not just his seafaring prowess, but also how he embraced the notorious pirate life. From these roots, Blackbeard's legend only grew, yet it's interesting to note that his rise in piracy was as much about daring exploits as it was about being in the right place at the right time with the right people.
Picking up from our previous discussion, Blackbeard's rise to fame really began with a significant acquisition, the capture of La Concorde. This wasn't just any ship, it's the one he would famously rename as the Queen Anne's Revenge. Imagine being able to lay your hands on such a powerful vessel, which wasn't only large but also swift, a prime candidate for successful piracy. And with it, Blackbeard enlarged his influence and his crew, setting the stage for his legendary reputation.
Indeed, the Queen Anne's Revenge became part of his personal legend, a symbol of his formidable presence at sea. But what about the alliances he formed along the way? One intriguing partnership was with Stede Bonnet, the so-called gentleman pirate. Despite Bonnet's initial struggles, Blackbeard saw potential in him and even took command of Bonnet's ship, the Revenge, at one point. It's interesting how these pirate alliances weren't just about brute force, but also about strategic advantage and shared objectives.
Absolutely. Blackbeard's clever tactics were almost like an artist crafting his masterpiece. Part of his strategy was creating a terrifying image. With his long black beard, often tied with ribbons, and smoke emanating from slow-burning fuses in his hair during battles, he was a sight to behold. This dramatic and fearsome appearance went a long way in intimidating his enemies, often resulting in surrender without a single shot fired. His reputation for being ruthless was part of what set him apart, even if it was more of a stage act.
That's an excellent way to put it. His reputation was as much about psychological warfare as it was about his actions. The mystery and fear surrounding him only grew with stories of his dreaded flag, the Jolly Roger. It became an iconic symbol of piracy. Although the exact design is debated, it's said to have portrayed a horned skeleton holding a spear and an hourglass, warning targets of their imminent demise if they resisted. But what's fascinating is how even these tales contribute to making Blackbeard not just a pirate, but a living legend of the seas.
Continuing from the tales of Blackbeard's rise, one of his most daring and unforgettable acts was the blockade of Charleston, South Carolina, in 1718. Imagine a pirate fleet halting all ships entering or leaving the port. That's audacious. Yet, what Blackbeard demanded for ransom was surprising to many. Instead of gold or jewels, he wanted a chest of medicine. It was a stark reminder that life on a pirate ship came with the constant threat of disease, more so than any naval battle.
That is truly fascinating. This blockade not only shows Blackbeard's audacity, but also his strategic mind. Later, some archaeological evidence, like a urethral syringe found in the wreck of his famous ship, the Queen Anne's Revenge, supports the idea that he was always mindful of health challenges on board. Yet, there were also allegations that Blackbeard may have engaged in some strategic deception. It's said he intentionally grounded some of his ships, possibly to divide the spoils and select the most loyal crew to continue sailing.
Yes, dividing the loot and crew speaks volumes about his leadership style. By splitting his crew, Blackbeard could have been ensuring he had the most valuable and trustworthy men aboard. His relations with local officials also added another layer to his infamy. He involved Governor Charles Eden of North Carolina in his dealings, which some say made them both richer and allowed Blackbeard to enjoy a brief respite from his piratical ways. This friendly arrangement with Eden has sparked much debate about whether Blackbeard was leveraging politics as a tool in his piratical endeavors.
The governor's support indeed seems to have been a calculated move from Blackbeard, showing he wasn't just ferocious but also quite politically savvy. This uneasy alliance ensured his safety and the continuation of his operations under a legal guise. It highlights how Blackbeard's notoriety wasn't only about fear, but also about cunning alliances. His ability to manage such relationships might have been as instrumental to his legendary status as his fierce image at sea. These interactions paint Blackbeard as a more complex figure than just a simple pirate, making his story endlessly intriguing.
So here's where we left off, with Blackbeard briefly enjoying a more legitimate life. But this was short-lived. Blackbeard couldn't resist the call of the sea and soon returned to his piratical ways. This decision didn't sit well with Governor Alexander Spotswood of Virginia. Unlike the more lenient Governor Eden, Spotswood saw piracy as a real threat and was determined to put an end to Blackbeard's reign once and for all.
Spotswood was adamant about capturing Blackbeard and dispatched Lieutenant Robert Maynard with a force to hunt him down. This pursuit led to the infamous final battle on November 22, 1718. Blackbeard's forces were heavily outnumbered, yet he confronted the British with his signature ferocity. Despite his bravado, the battle was brutal, and Blackbeard suffered multiple wounds before eventually being defeated.
Blackbeard's final moments were dramatic, fitting the legend he had created. Reports mentioned he received 25 wounds, 5 from gunshots, before he fell. His head was famously displayed from the bowsprit of Maynard's ship, a grisly trophy that emphasized the British victory. Blackbeard's death, however, didn't end his story. Myths and legends about him grew even larger, painting him both as a ruthless villain and a misunderstood figure.
That's right. The stories about Blackbeard became larger than life, adding to his legacy. Some tales depict him as a monstrous figure, merciless and brutal, while others suggest he was clever and strategic, avoiding violence when possible. The truth might lie somewhere in between, but the legacy he left behind continues to intrigue historians and enthusiasts alike. Blackbeard remains a cultural icon, symbolizing the romantic and terrifying image of a pirate, and his story is far from forgotten.
So, as we wrap up today's fascinating journey into the life of Edward Teach, also known as Blackbeard, we begin to see why he holds such a place in cultural history. His legacy as the most infamous pirate continues to ignite curiosity and inspire stories, even to this day. The man behind the fierce beard remains an enigma, but that very mystery only adds to his allure. Now, let's shift gears and talk about how you can stay engaged with this timeless tale.
Absolutely. If you found Blackbeard's story as intriguing as we did, we encourage you to explore even further. There are countless tales and historical analyses waiting to be discovered. Also, if you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and drop a comment. Your support helps us bring more captivating content to your ears. Thank you so much for joining us on this adventure through history. Until next time, keep exploring the past.